Welcome to this week's Endurance for Everyone podcast.
The following program is for entertainment purposes only. Though the hosts of this show are certified Ironman coaches, their attempts at long-course triathlons and endurance events should not be taken as an endorsement for you to do something stupid too. You should make your own bad decisions, then podcast about it. Now, let's start the show. Ready to start your journey? Whether it's your first workout or you are a seasoned athlete, Endurance for Everyone Coaching wants to work with you. Our coaching team has worked with athletes from beginners to USAT national qualifiers and are comprised of experienced runners, cyclists, and triathletes who have a passion for healthy living and have been where you are. We offer comprehensive coaching programs from weekly support to basic consultation, all designed to help you achieve your goals. If you want to take your performance to the next level, look no further than Endurance for Everyone Coaching. Go to www.teamE4E.com and click on the coaching link or send an email to teamE4E@enduranceforeveryone.com. And let's get started.
Welcome to episode 175 of the Endurance for Everyone podcast, and this is one of your favorites. I know that. You get to listen to me the whole show. So usually when this happens and I don't really have a guest or really don't have something specific I want to talk about, it takes a little bit longer to put a show together because I have to collect a bunch of musings that I have throughout the week and throughout the day. And these usually tend to come in the middle of a Zwift ride or the middle of the workday when I'm trying to work, but my mind is rambling. So to start off with, I guess, we need to talk about the fact, if you're on the Facebook group, you already know this, but due to some life issues and things that are kind of unavoidable, I've decided to forego INFINITUS this year. And it's not due to really training or anything like that. I feel like the training has been in line. But just due to normal life stuff, and it's probably the smarter thing to kind of wait a year and kind of hit it a little bit next year when I can hit it full force. Again, not training-wise, but, mentally. So what does that leave for the rest of the year? Because that was kind of the main thing for this year. So I've kind of, gone through my schedule and looked at things that are on the line, and there are things I'm going to keep on there. There's a 16-mile trail run in a couple of weeks that I'm still going to do, and midnight race, or not a midnight race, but a night race that I'm still going to do. A 100-mile ride that is split into 250s in May that I'm still going to do. And kind of refocus myself on some things. I did sign up for Runner's World in October, and I'm going to do the 5 and Dime, which is on a Saturday. So if anybody out there listening, this is a pretty popular event. So I would really like to get a contingent, I guess, of Endurance for Everyone, TeamE4E people up there. And if we get a good number of people, we can look into getting some gear and maybe even hats or something like that kind of identifies us. I know that the Sub 30 group has a big following up there. And we have a couple of people, more than a couple of people that are in both of these groups. So I don't want to, delve into their arena, I guess. But it's out there. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at doing a lot more Zwift rides. If you don't know what Zwift is, it's Z, Zebra, Whiskey, Indio, Foxtrot, Tango. Can't get the Navy out of the guy. Zwift.com and check it out. It's they do have a running side, which you need a pod for on your shoe. The pod from Zwift is only $30. It's pretty cheap. The cycling side does require a trainer, of course, but to get the most out of it, it does need to be a smart trainer. You can do it without a smart trainer. You just won't get the feeling of the climbs and the hills, etc. But I have set up, I haven't set up a team, but I have teamE4E at the end of my name. So if you want to participate in some of the group rides that I do, that I set up, Rob set up a few as well. And, search us out. Rob, I think his name is pretty singular, so you can find him pretty easy. But I think the end of his name, he has Dirt, DIRT. And my name is teamE4E. If you follow us, we will add you to our rides. We can't add you unless you follow us, and we're following each other, so that has to be done. And I try to do rides at least once a week, but I'm trying to do twice a week in the mornings at 5:15, and I'm trying to do at least one on the weekends. And I know Rob does a lot in the morning, early mornings. So if you're interested in meeting up with us, I'm in a solid D group. Rob is probably C to a B group. So, in my rides, I don't really say that you have to stay with everybody, because everybody rides it different. If I ride with Rob, he's going to leave me behind, and I don't want him to, not get his workout in to stay with me, and I'm not going to kill myself trying to stay with him, or I burn myself out. So it's pretty open, but it's kind of fun to have everybody on the same course, and you can see their names coming up. So if you've never done Zwift, check it out. I think you'll enjoy it. I am playing with the ideas. Anybody that's been around for a long time, this will shock. But I am swimming 3 times a week now, and getting to the point that I am starting to look at potentially competing in it, especially this year for the senior games, because I am that old. So, I have gotten better, but there are things that, coming from a triathlete background, that I'm not used to. The swimming is very different, and maybe we can do a whole show on the difference between triathlon-based swimming and this kind of swim, masters or competition swimming. But, I don't do flip turns. And a big thing that came up the other day I noticed is, like, the coach was telling me when I come off the wall to try to stay underwater past the flags. Now, which goes against what I was taught in a triathlon, which was don't go underwater off the wall. One, because we don't have walls. So it's like, get to the surface as much as possible, get as much stroking in as possible. But in this kind of competition, you're faster under the water. So if you kick off that wall and stay underwater, you're going to be faster. So it was kind of like, oh, wow. I mean, I can do that actually, but it took a while. It took a while to get it out of my head to stop coming up so fast and kind of ride it out and glide it out as much as I can. So the other one is that, and I don't know if this was maybe just the coach I had when I started, it was their thing, or it's just, a normal thing, but I was taught on my strokes to come in, put my hand in right in front of my head. So like a little short stroke. So when you're in triathlon, it's more of a shorter stroke. So you're not banging into people and things like that, because you're surrounded by people. Now he's telling me to kind of stretch it out, do more like a Superman stroke. So you're grabbing as much water as possible to push back, which did make me faster. But it took, again, a session or two of doing that to get it out of my head. And I notice that I revert back to that short stroke. So, it's a lot of, 8 years of triathlon and into this kind of swimming. It's a bit of a change. So it's interesting to see how fast I've improved. I'm nowhere near as fast as the other people in that group, but I have gone from January, I think I was doing 237 100 yards, and now I'm doing 153. So the form, everybody that swims knows is mostly about form, but it's really, really made a big difference in how fast I've been. So that's really what the next year is going to look like. I'm kind of going to take it easy and do events as I see them. Like I said, do Runner's World as my A event this year. And then, and it's really going to be about getting my personal life in order. Not to get too into that, but just getting my personal life in order and getting my head straight and losing the weight and really focusing on weight loss for the rest of the year and hitting 2020 with a real purpose on getting some of these events that I want to do done. So I'm going to talk a little bit about weight loss here in a moment. Okay, so weight loss and weighing in. There, of course, when, if you're on the group, again, you know about this, but Pete D'Amico from Fat Man Chronicles created a kind of a joint group between teamE4E and his listeners on Facebook for weight loss, for a challenge. And, of course, the founding members, and I believe he and I are admins. I'm not sure who else are admins in there, but we had to make a pact that we would not question, or, we can question, but we have to be careful about, the way people go about their weight loss, which is very hard for me because I don't like, especially in this day and age, I don't like fake news. I don't like things that people believe in because they're conventional wisdom that we know that is no longer true. We know these things aren't true. I mean, we had a large article come out last week about how eggs are not healthy, and we know that's not true. And it normally comes from sites and groups that have an agenda. There's a reason why, there's a reason why Coca-Cola is sponsored by the sugar, the sugar lobby and things like that. There's always a hidden agenda. So you have to be a little bit more leery about what you're reading and what you post as truth. And, of course, when you talk about weight loss, people will talk and truly believe in the calorie in, calorie out thing. And on a scientific level, it's like we used to get into it when Randy was the co-host. On a scientific level, it's true. If you burn more in physics, if you burn more than you take in, you should lose weight. Now, most of us know that doesn't work that way. I can burn two times what I bring in and gain weight. So not everybody's the same, is what I guess I was saying. If it helps you to think that calorie in, calorie out works, and that it helps you, that's fine. This is fine. But there's a line, I guess, with me when it comes to saying this works for me and then saying it should work for you too. I will say that this works for me. It may not work for you. There's, and I have a hard time, like, when I hear something that's just not true, like someone posting a thing on their diet, and it has a whole bunch of low fat stuff on it. And we know that if you take out the fat, they add sugar, and we all know that sugar causes you to get fat. So it's hard for me to not point that out to them, and I guess it's okay to point it out, but I guess it's a way you point it out. But, it's like, so you just have to remember, if they take away something, there's nothing wrong with full fat items. Fat is not going to make you fat. And I think most nutritionists out there are still on that bandwagon. They're still thinking that it's better to be low fat. And the science just doesn't bear it out. So that being what it may, the question also came up because I weigh myself every day. And there are people out there, and there are articles on both sides, but there are people out there and there are articles that say that if you weigh yourself every day, you become a slave to the scale, and you focus too much on the numbers and too much on how the number makes you feel. I will agree with that yes, when I know I've eaten well and I step on the scale and I've gained 2 pounds, that does bug me. But I also know, and it will get to me, and I might voice that frustration, but I also know, intellectually in my head, that you can't gain 2 pounds of fat in a day, just like you can't lose 2 pounds of fat in a day. If your weight drops 2 pounds in a day, that's not fat. That's pure inflammation going down, fluid loss. you can't, it's hard to lose 2 pounds in a week. So let's put it that way, so you're not going to lose it in a day and you're not going to gain it in a day. There are reasons that I weigh myself every day. And that is because being, who was it, Beth J. that said it on the group, she's a data geek as well. I'm a data geek and I have to have my data points, and it's just a mental thing with me. It makes me feel better. It makes me feel like I have a little bit of control on it. I hate the thought that I could be eating something new. Say I'm trying to think of something. I'm looking at sweet potatoes. Say sweet potatoes, which are supposed to be low in the glycemic index, right? They're better than white potatoes for you, everything. So I eat a sweet potato. I eat like a couple of sweet potatoes for dinner. And it's like I bought a whole bag, so I'm going to have sweet potatoes all week long. I don't weigh myself for a week. So I weigh maybe 200 pounds at the beginning of the week, and I get to the end of the week, I weigh 210. Well, obviously the sweet potatoes could have had an inflammatory effect on me. But I've eaten it for a week now. If I eat 2 sweet potatoes for dinner and I check the next day and everything else was good, except these are the 2 new items that I added in, and I step on the scale the next morning and I've gained 0.8 of a pound or a pound, I know immediately that, okay, something's going on with the sweet potato. So I don't eat them anymore. And I see what happens the next day. Does that go away? The idea that I could be doing something wrong for a week or a month, because I know some people don't weigh themselves for a month, but every month, I could have caught that earlier. And it comes from my job. In my last couple of jobs, if we're dealing with a social issue, saying we're providing this program and we're only going to look at it at the beginning and we're going to look at it 6 months from now, and we find out 6 months from now, holy crap, this wasn't working. This is actually having a negative effect. If we had looked at it after a week, we could have caught it and changed it at that point instead of changing it 6 months down the road, where who knows what damage it could have caused. It's just it's a mental thing with me. So the most recent example I had was I made chili, and I try to make it as low carb as I can, but I did put beans in it because I just needed some protein in it. And sure enough, the next 2 days, I went up 5-6 pounds. And I know I'm not gaining 5-6 pounds of fat, because I ate chili, but I know now that those beans are causing something in my body to retain water or inflame my body. So I'm not putting beans in them anymore. And I caught that after 2 days. And since then, in the past week, I've gone from 275 to 267. So obviously something was in it, something was doing that, Now I joked about it online and say I'm waiting for that bump back up again. And today it happened. It was like, a 1.2 pound bump up. I know what I ate yesterday, and I know what caused that bump. I won't get into what I ate yesterday because I shouldn't have eaten it, but I know now for sure that eating that caused that bump. So I also know things that I thought should cause a bump, like oatmeal, doesn't cause a bump with me. I tested that a couple weeks ago, and it's like no inflammation at all. And if you look at every low carb book, you're not supposed to eat oatmeal. But, I was kind of strapped one day for something for dinner and I had oatmeal. So I ate oatmeal, and next day still lost weight. So if the oatmeal had some kind of inflammatory effect on me, it wouldn't have gone down for sure. It probably would have bumped up, and it kept going down. I didn't see it 2 days from then. I didn't see it 3 days. So I also know that long races cause me to inflame, and it takes about 3 days for it to go away. So I know when I do this 16-mile run in a couple weeks, I know the next day, the next 2 days, I'm going to gain weight. It's going to look like my weight's going up. And then if this race is on a Saturday, by Wednesday, it's going to drop again because the inflammation is going to go away. So that's why I weigh every day. And I can post many studies out there to show why you should do it. And I can post many studies showing why you shouldn't. And it usually comes down to your mental ability to handle those bumps. So that's my reason, and I'm sticking to it. recent race that I did, which was the Starkey Stomp in Newport Richey at Starkey Wilderness Park. They have a race every year called the Starkey Stomp. It's a 5K, 10K, or half marathon in the trails. It's a great race. If you're in this area, even if you're not in this area, it's well worth the time. It's a great park to run in. It's usually the place I go to train when I'm training for a race if I don't want to drive up to Croom. That's me. Just a great place to go. When I'm alone out there racing, and especially like walking around before a race, I tend to look at people, and I might have mentioned this on Facebook before, but this is kind of, things like this kind of come out to me. And if anybody can explain some of these things to me, I would surely appreciate it. But, and I don't mean it to sound mean. I know people have different ways. People are brought up different ways, things like that. But there were a couple of things. The first one was like, we were waiting, and it was, before the race, everybody's starting to, come in, and this is a public park. So when they have a race like this, they don't close it. So you're going to have people out there that come out because they were coming to do the park and, to do the trails, not realizing there's a race in the middle of it. I know that's happened to me before, being out there and end up in the middle of a race. I didn't even realize it. But I'm standing there, and I'm sorry, this must be my psychology background that comes to play, because I notice things. Couple, car pulls up, obviously not in the race. They get out. First thing that gets out is the dog. And so there's a dog out, not on a leash. Supposed to be on a leash in the park, but anyway, not on a leash. Mother and, the couple gets out. And of course the mother goes around to the back. So obviously there's a child. So they come around, and they're walking up to the map where the map is. And this is what I'm seeing. The dog is not on a leash. The child is on a leash. And I took a picture of it, but then I decided, no, I'm not going to share this because, whatever, I don't want to, play with anybody's emotions, because people tend to get their feelings hurt very easily. But I just don't get that. I've never, ever understood the putting your child on a leash thing. I know people do it. I never understood it. I guess I just grew up in a different era that you listen to your parents, even if you were 2 or 3 years old, or you paid the consequence. But, the kid was he was walking. So, maybe 2. But I just don't understand why you can take the time to train the dog, but you haven't figured out how to train your kid to listen to you. And I just, I didn't get it. And it struck me funny, and it struck me a little sad in a way that it's come to that. But I'm trying to think of what the reaction would have been of my parents or my grandparents to see a kid on a leash in the 70s or even the 80s. And I'm sure people have their reasons. Like I said, I don't get it. The other thing I noticed, and this might be, and I am sorry if this offends anybody, but I just got to say it. This is Florida. We started the race, it was maybe 66 degrees at 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:15 in the morning. Within the first 30 minutes, it was in the mid 70s, and it was humid. It was hot. I saw no less than 5 racers out there dressed in all black. Black leggings, black shirt, and a black jacket in one case. They all happen to be female. So I didn't see one guy out there dressed in all black. I didn't see one guy in there with a black shirt on, let alone all black. So, and of course, when I'm coming up, and I was actually passing a few of these, a miracle in and of itself that I was passing anybody. And they're dripping sweat, and they're like, they're pulling up their shirt, they're pulling up their sleeves, taking off their jackets. What do they expect? It's Florida. Have you just moved here maybe? You don't know this? I don't get the overdressing. I guess the cardinal rule of a race is, if it's cold, of course. If it's cold weather, you dress in layers, you do that, keeps you warm. But the cardinal rule, as I was always taught, was you dress for the highest temperature of the race. So it might start off at 50 degrees, but if you know that you're running a marathon and it's going to be an 85-degree day in Florida, you might be cold at the beginning, but you best dress for that 85 degrees, because if you dress for that 50, you're going to be dying by that 85-degree mark. And it's going to affect you. It's going to affect your race. It's going to affect everything. You're going to be miserable. So there have been Disney races where I've done where I was freezing at the beginning because it was in maybe the 40s. And by the end of the race, it was near 90. And I was thanking God that, or whoever, that by the end of it, that I dressed like I did and kind of suffered through that the little bit of freezing that I was having in the beginning. Because if I had dressed with long pants or long shirts, long sleeve shirts or anything like that, I'd have been a mess by the end of it. I never would have made it through. So is this now, I'm asking you, the audience, is this just a female thing? Is it because black is slimming? I don't understand it. And I know probably because they're cold in the beginning, but and I don't know them, so I can't like really go up and ask them about, even though I wanted to very badly to go up and ask, why are you dressed like this? You are going to be dying by the end of this. But, maybe they have just moved to Florida. Maybe they don't realize what's going to happen. But, it's just an observation, and probably one that I could let go. But, it's just one of those funny things that I see. So to end the show, I want to go over a few things about TRAININGPEAKS and some of the numbers. I noticed, with a couple of my clients, I'll say things thinking that I've gone over something with them, and I'm sure I have at some point. But, most of my clients I've had for a while, and, you forget things like this if you don't think about it all the time. I had one that was running, and they told me, actually I knew it beforehand, they told me that one of their runs felt harder than it normally did. And this was an endurance, like not endurance, like a foundation run, which I'll give them like one a week, to more for time than for really effort or anything like that. And the comment was, this felt harder than it normally does for this kind of run. And sure enough, I look into TRAININGPEAKS, and first thing I look at is their decoupling. And what's their decoupling is, it's either the power to heart ratio or it's to pace to heart rate ratio, depending on if you're bicycling or cycling for power, or if you're running for pace. And in what you're shooting for in a I don't say normal, but to be considered fit, I guess you would say, you're looking for a number between like -5% to 8% on either side, and that is kind of something that that shows you your fitness level. If you can come into zero, like Rob, when he would do it, it was perfectly on 0%. It was always right on the money. So he was really fit according to this. And what this is it's basically, it's a measurement of your power or your pace to your heart rate. So if you look at it like this, when you're going at a zone 2 and your heart rate's maybe at a 120 or let's say 125. Your heart rate's at a 125. You're running a zone 2. As long as you stay at zone 2, your heart rate stays at 125. If you increase that, if you're running at a 14 and you increase to a 12-minute pace, your heart rate should go up with it. If you slow down to a walk and you're walking at a 17 pace, your heart rate should go down with it. When it doesn't, it's considered decoupled. So maybe you're running at you're increasing your rate from a 12-minute mile to a 10-minute mile, but your heart rate doesn't go up, or it slows down, or it goes up even higher, more than 5%. Or vice versa. If you're slowing down but your heart rate keeps going up, which happens to me all the time, you consider decoupled. When you're considered fit is when your heart rate follows it all the way. You slow down, your heart rate slows down. You speed up, your heart rate goes up. Everything follows the line. So, like I said, when they told me that it felt harder than normal, they are normally in the 3 to 5% range. So they're normally right on it. But when I looked at their TrainingPeaks account, of course, their decoupling, their PA to heart rate was 10.6% or something like that. So that showed it. I said, okay, yeah, it was. Your heart rate wasn't following your pace. So it does look harder. So you start looking at, when that happens, we start looking at, well, there's environmental factors. Was it hotter than normal? Was it colder than normal? Did you not eat right? Did you not get enough sleep? There's a lot of things that can affect that. But if you use TrainingPeaks with a coach or without a coach, it's a good thing to keep an eye on. Along with HRV, heart rate variability, if you do that, there's an app called iThlete, ITHLETE. I think it's $8 on the App Store on Apple. I don't know what it is on Google. And you would need a Bluetooth heart rate monitor or finger sensor or something. And it's something that you do first thing in the morning. And it gives you a good idea of your, what it measures is your time between heartbeats. So the more time between heartbeats, obviously, the more fit you are. A pro athlete will be in the 80s and 90s. I will tell you, mine this morning was a 47. And that's probably one of the better readings I've ever had. But it's really based on what your previous one was. So if I had a 30 yesterday and it's a 47 today, well, I've gotten better. I've recovered well. And it'll give you an idea of whether your body's recovered enough to go train. So if you were a 47, 47, 47, and you dip to a 20, it's probably going to give you a red signal saying, maybe you ought to not train today because your body, there's something going on there. Your heart rate's not recovered enough. So there's a lot of, John, about TrainingPeaks again. I highly recommend TrainingPeaks just because it has a lot of good information in it. There's a lot to, if you get the Premier Edition, which, costs a little bit more. There's a free edition and Premier Edition. It's $10 a month. There's a lot of information, a lot of metrics, a lot of people, there's really a lot of stuff to look at, and a lot of stuff as an amateur you probably don't, not that you don't care about it, but it's not a big deal. But the things that you should look at if you're looking at it is what's called acute training load, which is considered ATL. It's also called fatigue. I think it's called fatigue on their little their picture thing. And basically what fatigue is the weighted average of your daily training stress score, which is your TSS, over the last 7 days. So what's that's looking at is like your last week. How do you have you look the last week? The other side of that is your CTL, your chronic training load, which looks at the same thing over the last 42 days. And that's considered your fitness. The difference now, they'll look at the difference between that and your fatigue, and they'll get you what's called a TSB, or I'm trying to think of exactly what it's called. Oh, the training stress balance. This is called your fatigue. So it takes it from the previous day, and it's used to represent readiness to perform at a peak potential. So high positive value is indicative of undertraining. High negative is overtraining. So you're trying to hit it right in the middle. You usually want to be between -5 and +5 when you hit a race. So if you're one of my athletes, I'm trying to keep that TSB in that +5 to -5 range when you have a race, that last week before the race. I'll start, I think it was one, I haven't done it in a while because they've been pretty well on, but I'll notice like your TSB will get down to like a -30 or -20, which I know that means you're overtraining a little bit. I have one client that, that's concerned about their heart. So, when I look at the numbers, I'm not seeing it. Obviously I'm not a doctor, but there's something else going on there. But as far as their numbers, it's fine. So, that's why you can't just take this as gospel. You have to take this as part of your training and then how you feel. I can tell you that, I would tell Megan when she was coaching me, it's like, yeah, my numbers are fine, but I feel like my heart's beating out of my chest. I'm having that issue lately, actually, is that whenever biking is fine, swimming, sometimes I get it. But I've noticed that I take a long time to warm up and run. When I start running in a race, especially the first mile, it feels like I can't breathe. And then I'm fine. Then I'm like, okay, I got it now. It's almost like my heart rate settles in. Swimming has happened to me on occasion if I go out too hard. If I go out I've figured out that when they give our normal warm-up sets are 5-3-2, which is 500 swim, 300 pull, and a 200 kick. I've noticed that if I go out for that 500 swim, just swimming without a pull buoy, without, like something making me a little more buoyant, my heart rate goes through the roof, even swimming. So I figured out that if I swap the 500 and the 300 and do the 500 pull and do a 300 swim, I'm fine. And that way, if I put on the fins, which is going to make you work harder, I'm okay by then. I made a mistake, and once when I first got my fins, that I put them on right from the start, and I thought like I said, I couldn't breathe. So it's a matter of also figuring it out for yourself. Cycling, I don't have this issue. I get on the bike and almost hit it right from the start, and I'm fine. My heart rate never feels like that. It can get up there, during the race, but I never feel like I can't breathe. I am sure that if I was outside and I go to Sugarloaf Mountain here in Florida and, do that short ride up and then go up that mountain, I would feel it because I haven't had time to warm up. But for some reason, the warming up on cycling kind of, it does it on its own. But running and swimming, I have to be careful. So with running now, I actually have to force myself to almost not walk the first mile, but really, really go slow. Force myself, don't get above zone 2. Don't, get caught up in the starting gun hoopla and try to go out there too fast, kind of warm up into it. And then, when the heart rate feels better, then go. And it's, that's what it is. So if you have any questions, if you're not a client of mine, or you use TrainingPeaks on your own, or even, whatever, don't hesitate to shoot me an email, john@enduranceforeveryone.com, or teamE4E at enduranceforeveryone.com. Post it in the Facebook group. We will get you an answer. And, but a lot of it is kind of feeling it out and doing what you can. So, I'm going to end the show at this point. So if you're not on the Facebook group, search out teamE4E. As I said on Zwift, search out teamE4E, Instagram, Twitter, teamE4E. And teamE4E.com is our website. So we're moving most of the fatslowtriathlete.com stuff over to teamE4E.com. They're both still out there. They probably will always be out there, both of them, but mostly writing for teamE4E right now. So, and if you have any interest in coaching, let us know. I think we are very reasonably priced. And if you let us know, if you have issues, let us know, and we'll see what we can do. So until next time, this is John signing off.
Thanks for listening to the Endurance for Everyone podcast. If you have comments or questions for the show, send an email to teamE4E at enduranceforeveryone.com. And remember, swim calm, bike strong, and run steady.